The central control complex of the Titan forges rose before them like a metallic mountain, its surfaces crawling with defensive turrets and sensor arrays. Jack crouched behind an overturned maintenance cart, studying the approaches while his team regrouped around him. The facility's internal defense systems had activated, transforming the industrial complex into a deadly maze of automated weapons and force fields. A team confirmed defensive positions between us and the control center, reported Corporal Davis, the team's reconnaissance specialist. Heavy weapon emplacements, energy barriers, and at least 40 shadow troopers converging on our position. Through the facility's transparent aluminum windows, Jack could see the space battle continuing to rage. Admiral Constantine's fleet was taking heavy casualties, but they were holding the orbital platform's attention. Several Imperial ships were nothing more than expanding clouds of debris, but the surviving vessels continued to press their attack with suicidal determination. Oracle, time estimate for full facility lockdown. 17 minutes and 32 seconds. Once the lockdown is complete, reaching the control center will become mathematically impossible. Jack activated his suit's battlefield display, overlaying tactical information on his helmet's heads-up display. The route to the control center wound through 3 major defensive choke points, each one capable of stopping a full assault platoon. With only 4 Supreme Guard operatives, the odds were beyond impossible. "New plan," he announced. "We're not going to the control center." Vasquez looked at him sharply. "Sir? Think about it. This facility was designed by Imperial engineers. There have to be maintenance shafts, emergency access routes, backup systems that the Dark World doesn't know about." Jack pulled up the original construction blueprints that Oracle had stored. "There, Service Tunnel Alpha 7. It runs directly beneath the control center. That tunnel was sealed during the Dark World modifications," Oracle pointed out. "And even if it were accessible, it leads to a maintenance bay 40 meters below the main control room. 40 meters of highly explosive industrial equipment," Jack corrected. "Vasquez, how much thermal explosive do we have?" His sergeant major grinned behind her helmet. "Enough to crack a moon, sir." "Then let's crack something smaller." The service tunnel was a nightmare of organic growth and mechanical decay. The Dark World had allowed their biotechnology to spread through the facility's infrastructure like a cancer, transforming clean Imperial corridors into pulsing arteries of living metal. The team moved in single file, their lights casting eerie shadows on walls that seemed to breathe. "Motion sensors are going crazy down here," Davis reported. "But I think it's just the biotech reacting to our presence." "Keep moving," Jack ordered. "The longer we stay in one place, the more likely they are to track us." Behind them, they could hear the facility's security forces systematically searching the upper levels. Automated announcements echoed through the corridors in the Dark World's guttural language, coordinating the hunt for the intruders. Jack pushed the team faster, knowing that their window of opportunity was closing rapidly. The maintenance bay was a vast chamber filled with the facility's primary power distribution systems. Massive conduits carried energy from the fusion reactors to the construction bays, while backup generators hummed with standby power. Most importantly, the chamber sat directly beneath the control center's main computer core. "Oracle, can you identify the primary structural supports?" Highlighting now. "However, I must point out that destroying these supports will likely result in the destruction of the entire control complex. The chance of survival for anyone inside the facility is—" "I know," Jack interrupted. "But if we can't take the facility intact, we can at least deny it to the enemy." He began placing shaped charges at strategic points while his team established a defensive perimeter around the chamber's entrances. The explosives were designed to channel their force upward, collapsing the control center into the maintenance bay while leaving the rest of the facility relatively intact. "Sir," Pike called from his position by the main entrance. "We've got company incoming. Looks like they figured out where we went." Jack finished arming the last charge and activated the timer, 90 seconds to detonation. "Everyone out. Emergency extraction to the docking bay." They ran through the service tunnels as the facility's security forces closed in behind them. Jack could hear the distinctive whine of energy weapons charging, followed by the sizzle of photon beams cutting through the tunnel walls. The Dark World troops were trying to collapse the passages to trap them. 60 seconds to detonation, Oracle announced calmly. The team burst from the tunnel system into the docking bay, where their captured patrol ship waited among the Dark World vessels. But the bay was no longer empty. Squads of shadow troopers were taking position around their escape route, their weapons trained on the tunnel exits. 30 seconds. Oracle continued her countdown. Jack activated his assault rifle's area effect setting and opened fire on the nearest group of enemies. The photon burst spread into a devastating cone of energy that carved through their ranks, but more shadow troopers were moving to replace them. "Torres!" he shouted into his comm. "We need immediate extraction. Defiant Dawn is powering up, sir. Give me 60 seconds. We don't have 60 seconds. 10 seconds to detonation," Oracle announced. Jack grabbed a fusion grenade from his belt and hurled it toward the largest concentration of enemies. The explosion cleared a temporary path to their ship, and the team sprinted across the open ground as energy beams lanced around them. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The maintenance bay exploded upward like a volcano. The control center, a structure the size of an Imperial destroyer, collapsed into the chamber below with a roar that shook the entire facility. Emergency lights flickered and died as power systems overloaded, plunging sections of the Titan forges into darkness. But Jack barely noticed the destruction. As they reached their captured ship, he was staring at something impossible. The facility's main construction bay was opening, revealing something that made his blood freeze. A ship was emerging from the bay. But it wasn't one of the Dark World's void ships. It was an Imperial dreadnought, massive and magnificent, its hull gleaming with fresh construction. The ship was nearly complete, lacking only its weapon systems and final armor plating. "Oracle," Jack whispered. "What is that?" "Accessing construction records. It appears to be an Imperial Sovereign-class dreadnought, approximately 95% complete. Designation, Eternal Vigilance. The Dark World was building an Imperial ship? Negative. Analysis of the construction logs indicates this vessel was under construction when the facility was captured. The Dark World has been studying it." Jack understood immediately. They weren't just building ships, they were learning how to build Imperial ships. Once they understood Imperial technology completely, they could create perfect infiltration units, vessels that could penetrate Imperial defenses without being detected. "Change of plans," he announced to his team. "We're taking that dreadnought." "Sir," Vasquez said carefully, "that ship is the size of a small city. We have 4 people. We have Oracle," Jack corrected. "And we have the element of surprise. They think we're trying to escape. They won't expect us to steal their prize." The Defiant Dawn screamed out of the service bay, Torres pushing the engines to their absolute limits. Behind them, the Titan forges was erupting in secondary explosions as the control center's destruction triggered cascade failures throughout the facility. But ahead of them, the Eternal Vigilance was beginning to move under its own power, guided by a Dark World command crew. "Torres, can you match the dreadnought's course?" "I can try, but we'll be completely exposed to their weapons." "Do it." The courier's ship accelerated toward the massive dreadnought, weaving between defensive fire from the facility's remaining weapons. The Eternal Vigilance was beautiful in the way that only Imperial warships could be, sleek lines interrupted by weapon ports and sensor arrays, her hull decorated with the golden eagles that marked her as a vessel of the Empire. "Docking bay is open on the starboard side," Davis reported. "Looks like they're still loading equipment aboard. That's our way in. Torres, take us into that bay." The Defiant Dawn slipped into the dreadnought's cavernous hangar bay, settling down among Dark World shuttles and cargo haulers. Jack could see the enemy crew moving equipment and supplies throughout the ship, preparing for some kind of mission. But more importantly, he could see that the ship's defensive systems weren't fully activated. They were still in construction mode. "Oracle, can you access the ship's computer systems from here?" "Attempting connection." "Success." The ship's AI core is inactive, but I can interface with the basic operating systems. However, I detect approximately 300 Dark World personnel aboard, including command staff and technical crews. Can you take control of the ship's internal systems? To a limited degree. Life support, internal communications, artificial gravity, and some defensive systems are accessible. However, the navigation and weapons systems require manual activation from the bridge. Jack studied the ship's internal layout on his tactical display. The bridge was 20 decks up and half a kilometer away through corridors that would be swarming with enemy personnel. But if they could reach it. Oracle, I need you to create a distraction. Trigger every alarm, false emergency, and system malfunction you can access. Make them think the ship is having a catastrophic failure. Acknowledged. Initiating chaos protocol in 3, 2, 1. The dreadnought's internal lighting shifted to emergency red as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Oracle triggered fire suppression systems, closed bulkhead doors at random, and activated evacuation protocols for non-existent hull breaches. Within minutes, the orderly transfer of equipment had become a panic scramble as Dark World personnel tried to respond to dozens of simultaneous emergencies. Now we move, Jack ordered. Fast and quiet until we reach the bridge, then loud and violent. They made their way through the ship's corridors using maintenance shafts and service passages that Oracle guided them through. The Eternal Vigilance was a masterpiece of Imperial engineering, her interior designed for both efficiency and beauty. Under other circumstances, Jack would have admired the craftsmanship that had gone into her construction. Bridge access is 2 levels up, Oracle reported. However, I detect 37 Dark World personnel in the immediate area, including what appears to be a command staff. Defensive positions? Minimal. They appear to be focused on resolving the various system failures I have created. Jack activated his weapon systems and checked his ammunition count. They would have one chance at this. If they failed to take the bridge quickly, the entire ship would be alerted to their presence. Vasquez, Pike, cover the main entrance. Davis, watch our back. When we go in, we go fast and we don't stop until everything hostile is down. The bridge of the Eternal Vigilance was a cathedral of Imperial naval architecture. The command deck rose in tiers toward a central platform where the captain's chair commanded a view of the entire space. Holographic displays showed the ship's status and the ongoing space battle outside, while elegant workstations provided control over every aspect of the vessel. It was also filled with Dark World creatures frantically trying to understand why their captured prize was apparently self-destructing. Jack's assault rifle spoke first, its photon burst illuminating the bridge like lightning. The nearest Dark World technician simply dissolved under the concentrated fire, while Vasquez's shots took down 2 more before they could react. Pike moved like a dancer, his vibroblade carving through enemies with deadly precision. The battle for the bridge lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, Jack stood among the scattered remains of the Dark World command crew, breathing hard inside his armor while Oracle began integrating with the ship's primary systems. Bridge secure, he reported. Oracle, status? Integration complete. I have full control of all ship systems. Weapons platforms are coming online now. Through the bridge's main view screen, Jack could see the space battle still raging around the Titan forges. Admiral Constantine's fleet was down to perhaps 30 ships, but they were holding their positions with desperate courage. The orbital platforms were heavily damaged, their fire becoming sporadic as power systems failed. Oracle, signal Admiral Constantine. Tell her we have a new command ship. The Eternal Vigilance turned toward the battle, her massive engines pushing her forward with surprising grace for such a large vessel. As she approached the orbital platforms, her weapon systems came online, dozens of photon cannons, particle beam projectors, and missile launchers that could devastate entire fleets. All stations, this is the Eternal Vigilance. Jack broadcast on Imperial frequencies. We are an Imperial Navy vessel engaging Dark World targets. All Imperial units, coordinates your fire on the orbital platforms. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. The surviving Imperial ships turned toward the platforms with renewed vigor, their weapons' fire joining with the dreadnought's devastating broadside. The first platform simply disintegrated under the concentrated assault, its destruction lighting up the darkness like a new star. Oracle, what's the status of the Titan forges? Critical systems are failing throughout the facility. However, the primary construction bays remain intact. With proper repairs, the facility could be operational within 72 hours. Jack smiled grimly as the second orbital platform exploded. Then it looks like we have our base of operations after all. But even as victory seemed within reach, Oracle's voice carried a note of warning. Colonel, I am detecting massive hyperspace distortions at the system's edge. Multiple contacts emerging. It appears the Dark World is sending reinforcements. On the tactical display, red icons began appearing by the dozens. An entire Dark World fleet was dropping out of hyperspace, their ships larger and more powerful than anything Jack had seen before. At their center was a vessel that defied easy description, a massive structure that seemed to fold space around itself, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. Oracle, what is that thing? Unknown configuration. Energy readings are extraordinary. I believe it may be a command ship from the Dark World's core territories. As if responding to their attention, the massive ship began broadcasting a signal on all frequencies. The voice that emerged was like the sound of dying stars, ancient and terrible beyond comprehension. Imperial vermin, it said, the words somehow translated into human language. You have taken what belongs to the dark. This transgression will not be tolerated. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Jack stared at the enemy fleet, counting the odds. Over 200 Dark World ships against 30 Imperial survivors and 1 captured dreadnought. By any rational calculation, they were already dead. But rationality had never been the Supreme Guard's strong point. Oracle, open a channel. All frequencies. Channel open, Colonel. Jack took a deep breath, thinking of Emperor Aurelius and the oath he had sworn so many years ago. This is Lieutenant Colonel Jack Nicholson of the Imperial Supreme Guard, commanding the dreadnought Eternal Vigilance. To the forces of the Dark World, you may have destroyed our empire, but you have not destroyed our resolve. We are the light that shines in the darkness, and we will never surrender. He turned to his crew. Vasquez, take us to battle stations. Oracle, charge all weapons and prepare for engagement. Signal Admiral Constantine, we're going to show these shadows what the Empire really means. As the two fleets closed toward each other across the void, Jack felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just another battle, it was a test of everything the Empire had stood for. And regardless of the outcome, he intended to make sure the galaxy remembered that some lights refused to be extinguished. The Eternal Vigilance led the Imperial fleet in a desperate charge toward the Dark World Armada, her weapons blazing as she carved through space like a golden spear thrust into the heart of shadow. Around her, the surviving Imperial ships followed with the courage of the doomed, their crews knowing that this might be their final battle but determined to make it count. Distance to enemy fleet, 400,000 kilometers and closing, Oracle reported with clinical precision. Enemy formation suggests they intend to envelop our forces and eliminate us through concentrated fire. Jack studied the tactical display from the captain's chair, noting how the Dark World ships moved with perfect coordination. Their formation was beautiful in its lethality, a complex three-dimensional web designed to bring maximum firepower to bear while minimizing their own exposure to Imperial weapons. Oracle, can you identify the command ship's capabilities? Negative. Its energy signature is unlike anything in Imperial databases. However, I am detecting massive gravitational anomalies around the vessel. It appears to be manipulating space-time itself. Weapons range in 30 seconds, reported Vasquez from the tactical station. All Imperial ships report ready for engagement. Through the view screen, Jack could see the enemy fleet growing larger, their ships like moving voids against the starfield. At their center, the massive command vessel pulsed with energies that made reality itself seem to ripple around it. Whatever that thing was, it represented a level of Dark World technology they had never encountered before. Admiral Constantine, Jack said into the calm. Deploy the fleet in attack formation Delta. We're going to punch through their center and take out that command ship. Acknowledged, Vigilance. All ships form on the dreadnought. Let's show them how the Imperial Navy dies. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a miniature galaxy being born. The Eternal Vigilance's forward battery spoke with the voice of concentrated starfire, her photon cannons and particle beams reaching across the void to strike the nearest dark world vessels. Two of the enemy's ships simply vanished, atomized by the dreadnought's devastating firepower. But the return fire was equally savage. Dark world weapons tore through the Imperial formation, their entropy cannons unmaking matter at the quantum level. The light cruiser Dauntless simply ceased to exist, leaving only a brief flash of dispersing energy where she had been. Hull breach on Deck 7, Oracle reported as the ship shuddered under enemy fire. Damage control teams responding. Jack gripped the arms of his chair as another salvo struck their shields. The Eternal Vigilance was powerful, but she was facing an entire fleet. Around them, Imperial ships were dying one by one, their crews selling their lives as dearly as possible. Oracle, time to reach the command ship? At current velocity, 17 minutes. However, our survival probability decreases to near zero within the next 8 minutes. Then we need to change the equation. Can you access the ship's construction records? Specifically, any experimental systems that might not be in the standard configuration? Oracle paused, an eternity in AI terms. Searching. Colonel, there is one system that was installed during the final construction phase. Project designation, Stellar Lance. What is it? A prototype weapon system designed to channel energy directly from a ship's fusion reactors through the main deflector array. Theoretical output would be equivalent to a solar flare concentrated into a coherent beam. Theoretical? The system was never tested. Computer models suggest a significant probability of catastrophic failure. Jack watched another Imperial ship die in a flash of twisted light. What kind of catastrophic failure? Complete destruction of the firing vessel. And if it works? The beam would be capable of penetrating any known defensive system and inflicting damage equivalent to a Stellar-class weapon. Jack didn't hesitate. Do it. Charge the Stellar Lance. Colonel, Vasquez said urgently, the ship's power grid can't handle that kind of output. We'll lose shields, engines, life support, everything. I know. Oracle, how long to charge the weapon? 90 seconds. However, without deflector shields, the ship will be vulnerable to any enemy fire. Then we'll have to hope 90 seconds is enough. Jack opened a channel to the remaining Imperial ships. All vessels, this is Vigilance. We're going to attempt a long-range shot at the enemy command ship. When we fire, we'll be completely defenseless. I need you to cover us. Admiral Constantine's voice crackled back through the calm. Understood, Vigilance. All ships close formation around the dreadnought. Whatever happens, we keep them off her until she can fire. The next 90 seconds were an eternity of violence and heroism. The surviving Imperial ships, now numbering fewer than 20, formed a defensive screen around the Eternal Vigilance, pouring their fire into the approaching Dark World fleet. They paid for every second with blood and metal, their hulls cracking under enemy fire as they fought to protect their flagship. The destroyer Resolute rammed a Dark World cruiser rather than let it break through the screen. The heavy cruiser Indomitable continued firing even as her superstructure collapsed around Admiral Constantine's bridge. One by one, the lights of the Imperial fleet were going out. Stellar Lance at 70% charge, Oracle reported. Power fluctuations throughout the ship. Hull integrity compromised on multiple decks. Hold her together, Jack ordered. Just a little longer. The Dark World command ship was close enough now that he could see details of its impossible structure. It wasn't built so much as grown, its hull flowing like liquid metal while energies that shouldn't exist pulsed through conduits that folded back on themselves. Looking at it directly made his eyes water, as if his brain was rejecting what it was seeing. 90%, 100%. Stellar Lance is fully charged, Colonel. Firing solution locked on target. Fire! The Eternal Vigilance screamed as every joule of power in her fusion cores was channeled through the main deflector array. The beam that emerged was like a piece of a star torn free and hurled across space, a lance of pure energy that carved through the void with the fury of creation itself. The Dark World Command ship's defensive fields simply evaporated under the assault. The beam struck its hull and kept going, boring through layers of exotic matter and impossible geometries until it reached whatever passed for the vessel's core. For a moment, the massive ship hung in space, its structure wavering like a mirage. Then it exploded. The detonation wasn't like a normal ship's destruction. Reality itself seemed to tear apart around the command vessel, creating a rift in space-time that swallowed light and twisted the surrounding area into configurations that hurt to perceive. Several nearby Dark World ships were caught in the effect and simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but edited out of the universe entirely. But the victory came at a terrible cost. The Eternal Vigilance was powerless, her systems dark and her hull venting atmosphere from dozens of breaches. Around her, the remnants of the Imperial fleet hung in space like broken toys, most of them dead or dying. Oracle status? All primary systems offline. Life support operating on emergency power only. I estimate 12 hours of air remaining. Through the view screen, Jack could see the surviving Dark World ships regrouping, their formation thrown into chaos by the destruction of their command vessel. But there were still over 100 of them, more than enough to finish off the crippled Imperial fleet. Sir, Vasquez said quietly, we did it. We hurt them. Really hurt them. Jack nodded, watching as the enemy fleet began to advance again. They had struck a blow that the Dark World would remember, but it wouldn't be enough to save them. Still, there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that they had proven the Empire's ideals weren't dead yet. Oracle, any word from the Resistance cells? Negative. Communications are down across all frequencies. Then, impossibly, new contacts began appearing on the tactical display. Ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge, dozens of them, then hundreds. Jack stared in disbelief as the sensor readings resolved into familiar configurations. Imperial ships. Hundreds of Imperial ships. Oracle, how is this possible? Analyzing. These appear to be vessels from across the former Empire. Resistance cells, survivor groups, hidden fleets that have been operating independently since the fall. They're responding to the beacon signal we transmitted. The comm channels suddenly exploded with voices, captains and crews from across the galaxy, all converging on the Kepler system in response to Jack's call for unity. The message had spread faster than they had dared hope, carried by quantum relay through the network of resistance cells that still believed in the Empire's ideals. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell of the battlecruiser Phoenix Rising, came one voice. We received the rally signal and came as fast as we could. What's the situation? This is Commander Zhang aboard the heavy destroyer Defiance, called another. We brought 3 squadrons from the Vega Resistance. What do you need us? Admiral Constantine's voice, weak but determined, came through the chaos. All Imperial vessels, this is Admiral Constantine aboard the Indomitable. Form battle lines and prepare to engage Dark World forces. Long live the Empire! The response was immediate and overwhelming. Long live the Empire! Echoed across hundreds of comm channels as the improvised fleet moved into attack formation. Jack watched in amazement as ship after ship took position around the Eternal Vigilance. These weren't the polished vessels of the old Imperial Navy. They were patched-together survivors, civilian ships with military weapons, and veteran warships that had been fighting a guerrilla war for months. But they flew Imperial colors, and they had come when called. Oracle, fleet strength. 437 vessels confirmed, with more arriving every minute. Mixed composition, but significant combat capability. The Dark World fleet is now outnumbered approximately 2 to 1. The Dark World ships, faced with an enemy force that had appeared from nowhere and outnumbered them significantly, began to withdraw toward the system's edge. But the Imperial fleet wasn't content to let them escape. Led by ships whose crews had lost everything to the Dark World's advance, they pursued with the fury of the righteous. What followed wasn't so much a battle as an execution. The Dark World ships fought with their usual coordination and deadly efficiency, but they were overwhelmed by sheer numbers and the desperate courage of people fighting for their homes. One by one, the shadow vessels were hunted down and destroyed, their crews finding no mercy from opponents who had seen too much to offer any. "Oracle," Jack said as the last Dark World ship exploded. "Damage report on the fleet. Casualties are significant but manageable. We have sufficient ships to hold this system and begin offensive operations elsewhere. More importantly, morale appears to be exceptionally high." Jack could understand why. For the first time since the Empire's fall, they had not just survived a Dark World attack, they had won decisively. The enemy fleet was destroyed, the Titan forges were in Imperial hands, and hundreds of resistance cells had been unified under a single command. "Signal all ships," Jack ordered. "This is Lieutenant Colonel Jack Nicholson, acting fleet commander. The Dark World may have won the first round, but the fight is far from over. Today, we reclaim our first system. Tomorrow, we take back our galaxy." The response was immediate and deafening. Across hundreds of ships, thousands of voices raised in a cheer that could probably be heard in hyperspace. For the first time in months, the Empire was truly fighting back. But even as Jack savored the victory, Oracle's analysis was painting a sobering picture of the challenges ahead. "Colonel, I have been analyzing the data recovered from the Dark World command ship before its destruction. The intelligence is disturbing." "What did you find?" "The Dark World's invasion of our galaxy is only the beginning. They have identified 17 other dimensional realities that they intend to consume. Our universe is simply one course in a larger feast." Jack felt cold settle in his stomach. "How long do we have?" "Based on their timetable, they plan to begin the next phase of expansion within 1 standard year. Colonel, if they succeed in opening permanent gateways to other realities, they will become effectively unstoppable. Then we'll have to stop them before that happens." Jack stood and walked to the view screen, looking out at the fleet that had answered his call. "Oracle, begin compiling target lists. We have a year to find and destroy every Dark World installation in this galaxy." "Colonel, the scope of such an operation would be unprecedented. We would need to coordinate resistance cells across thousands of star systems, build new weapons, construct a fleet capable of challenging their main forces." "Then that's what we'll do." Jack turned back to face the bridge, where his crew was working to restore the ship's systems. "The Emperor once told me that the sword chooses its own hand. Maybe it's time I understood what he meant." As the Eternal Vigilance slowly powered back up, her hull gleaming in the light of Kepler's binary suns, Jack began to plan the next phase of their campaign. The Empire was dead, but from its ashes, something new was being born, a resistance movement with the will to fight across galaxies and the courage to stand against the dark. The real war was just beginning. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 186f, the Titan forges hummed with activity once again. The massive construction bays that had once built Dark World vessels now produced Imperial ships at a rate that would have impressed the old Empire's admiralty. But these weren't the elegant, ceremonial vessels of the past. They were warships built for a single purpose: to carry the fight to the enemy. Lieutenant Colonel Jack Nicholson stood in the facility's command center, watching as the latest battle reports scrolled across the holographic displays. The network of resistance cells that had once been scattered and demoralized now formed a coordinated military force spanning half the galaxy. In 6 months, they had liberated 47 star systems and destroyed 3 major Dark World installations. "The Rigel offensive was a complete success," reported Admiral Constantine, who had survived her wounds and now served as Jack's deputy commander. "Captain Morrison's task force eliminated the Shadow shipyards with minimal casualties. The system is secure." "And the Vega research facility?" "Colonel Ramirez's ground assault went exactly as planned. We've recovered significant intelligence about their dimensional gateway technology, along with several intact examples of their equipment." Jack nodded, studying the tactical display that showed the current state of the galactic conflict. The map was still predominantly red, indicating Dark World control, but there were growing patches of blue marking liberated Imperial territory. More importantly, The advance of the Shadow forces had been halted for the first time since the invasion began. Oracle, what's the status of Project Daybreak? Construction is proceeding ahead of schedule, the AI replied. The stellar engineering platform is now 67% complete. Estimated time to full operational capability, 4 months, 2 weeks. And the dimensional research? Dr. Chen's team has made significant progress understanding Dark World Gateway technology. They believe it may be possible to not only prevent the enemy from opening new portals but to close existing ones permanently. Jack allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. When he had first proposed retaking the galaxy from the Dark World, it had seemed like an impossible dream. But the spirit that had built the original empire proved to be stronger than anyone had imagined. Across hundreds of worlds, ordinary people had stood up to fight for their freedom, and slowly but surely, they were winning. Sir, interrupted Captain Torres, who now served as the facility's communications officer. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Perseus arm. It's unusual. Define unusual. The signal is coming from outside our galaxy entirely. Source appears to be approximately 2 million light-years distant. Jack felt his blood chill. Dark World? Negative, sir. The quantum signature matches Imperial encryption protocols. Someone out there is using our codes. Jack exchanged glances with Admiral Constantine. Put it through. The main display shimmered and resolved into the image of a man in an Imperial Navy uniform, but one whose design Jack didn't recognize. The cut was similar to current Imperial style, but there were subtle differences in the insignia and decorative elements. Greetings, the figure said, his voice carrying despite the vast distance. I am Admiral Harrison Kepler of the Andromeda Imperial Fleet. We have been monitoring your conflict with the entities you call the Dark World. Andromeda Imperial Fleet? Constantine whispered. The figure continued. 200 years ago, an Imperial expedition was sent to establish colonies in the Andromeda Galaxy. We have thrived there, building a new empire based on the ideals you fought so hard to preserve. When we detected the dimensional incursions in your galaxy, we knew we had to act. Jack found his voice. Admiral Kepler, this is Lieutenant Colonel Jack Nicholson of the Galactic Imperial Resistance. Are you saying there's another empire in Andromeda? Not another empire, Colonel. The same empire, expanded across the void between galaxies. We never forgot our origins, and we never stopped believing in the principles that our ancestors carried to the stars. Can you provide assistance? Admiral Kepler smiled. Colonel, we're not calling to offer assistance. We're calling to inform you that the Andromeda battle fleet is already en route to your galaxy. 2,000 ships, carrying weapons and technologies developed specifically to combat dimensional incursions. Estimated arrival time, 6 months. The command center erupted in cheers as the implications sank in. Not only were they not alone in their fight against the Dark World, but help was coming on a scale that would dwarf their current forces. There's something else, Admiral Kepler continued. Our scientists have been studying the Dark World phenomenon for decades. We believe we've found a way to seal their primary access point permanently, to lock them out of our reality entirely. But it will require precise coordination between our fleets and the completion of your Project Daybreak. Jack felt a smile spreading across his face. Admiral, it sounds like we have a lot to discuss. Indeed we do, Colonel. Stand fast until we arrive. The Empire is coming home. As the transmission ended, Jack looked around the command center at the faces of his officers and crew. 6 months ago, they had been broken survivors hiding in the ruins of a fallen civilization. Now they were the advance guard of an empire that spanned galaxies, preparing to drive an ancient evil back into the darkness where it belonged. He thought of Emperor Aurelius's final words. The light will return, Colonel. When the darkness seems absolute, the light will return. Outside the Titan forges, the stars shone with renewed brightness, as if the galaxy itself sensed that change was coming. In shipyards across dozens of systems, Imperial vessels were under construction. In training facilities scattered throughout liberated space, new generations of Supreme Guard operatives were learning to carry on the traditions of their fallen predecessors. The Empire was dead, Long live the Empire. Oracle, Jack said quietly. Begin preparing tactical assessments for a coordinated assault on the Dark World's primary strongholds. It's time to plan the final offensive. Acknowledged, Colonel. Should I also begin preparing victory celebration protocols? Jack looked out at the starfield, where the lights of Imperial ships moved in perfect formation. Not yet, Oracle. But soon. Very soon. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the darkness had come to their galaxy, Jack Nicholson truly believed they were going to win. The sword had indeed chosen its hand, and that hand would carry the light back to every corner of the universe. In the depths of space, the shadows waited. But they were no longer advancing. The Empire was coming, and this time, it would not fall.